So we're back on after lunch, and we are now dealing with attachment 5, which is on page 33, and this is the proposal in relation to the indoor recreational facility. And the recommendation for resolution from staff is the one on page 10 at paragraph 42. So thank you, Lars. We'll hand it over to you. Hi, Michelle, back.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just to people going to help me with this is Matthew Bayliss, who's our Swimming and Recreation Manager, Michelle Hollands from Sport Waikato. She works with Matthew Cooper. She's really works around the regional facilities plan and the rollout of that. And we've also got Megan Campbell here, the chair of the Establishment Board of Trustees at the Rototuna High School. So Michelle and Megan will be able to answer any councillors' questions relating to the school and also Sport Waikato and the regional facilities plan. Look, I'm not going to do a presentation, Your Worship. I think the report was reasonably self-explanatory. I know 7 or so councillors went up to the site on Saturday and had a very good tour around the site and probably got a good impression of the location and what the proposal is. And I think some of the speakers this morning highlighted the unique partnership opportunity that's before us at the moment. And I think the key thing is probably the window of opportunity at the moment, and the school and MOE need a sign-off by council by the 31st of March, whether or not we're going to partner in this. Obviously for construction reasons, they've got contracts locked in with Arrow International, and to make use of the contracted rates that they've locked in for the construction of the school. I think going ahead with two more courts that's funded by Hamilton City Council. Obviously we end up with that 4-court recreation centre in the northeast of the city, which is recommended by the Regional Sports Facilities Plan, and that can actually pretty much be up and operational, all things being equal, by around April, May, June next year. So I think there's a real opportunity to actually get this off the ground in partnership with the school. The one other thing I would like to highlight, without getting into the detail of it today, is something that Megan indicated this morning. Was from the school's point of view, they've done a lot of work with the ministry around actually putting all the potential community share facilities at the front of the school in the design. That's something which is quite a departure from what the MOE normally do, and there's a real shift here, not only in Hamilton but nationally. So I think that's the Board of Trustees need to be congratulated for that. So, but there is an opportunity with the library and the black box theatres, and then also with the sports fields and our proposed sports fields over the road, for that partnership to grow in the future if that's where council and the school want it to be. So I think there's a real opportunity there. The other thing, there was just a couple of other things. There was discussion around the what the governance and operational models would be. Very clear that MOE would own the facility, and staff's preference, and Megan alluded to that earlier this morning, was that a trust is set up that governs the operations of the facility, so that everyone has a say in how that operates, and that the school get use of the two courts funded by the MOE during school hours, and then the community gets use of that after hours. But the two Hamilton City Council funded courts would be community use 100% of the time. So notwithstanding the fact that the school could use it if they've got a national schools tournament on or something like that. Not only is the high school there, there's also other schools in the area, the Christian school, Te Tautara Primary School, and others planned. So there is quite a larger base to draw upon for capacity during the normal times when these facilities don't get as much use, e.g. during school hours. So I think there's a real opportunity to get maximised use from this facility. Obviously a lot of that detail would need to be worked through if you looked upon these recommendations favourably today, and my team's all geared up for that, and we've already been having discussions with Megan, also MOE people, with other models, Tamaki College model, Mirapara School model, that are out there around these types of operational trusts and governance arrangements. So we're ready to go on that sort of thing. The other part of this is the operational grant. There's a recommendation that we put an operational grant into this facility and capping that. We've done some work around that, modelling that, around the costs of running the facility and a cost share. Obviously, we'd have to refine that further as we work through a process, if that's where you want us to head. Look, I'll leave it there, Your Worship. I'm sure there's going to be some questions.
Right, so I've got Councillor Forsyth and Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. Oh, and look, Your Worship, I'd just like to signal now that I'm prepared to move the recommendations when the appropriate time comes.
Right.
But I do have a couple of questions. So just around, so 2 courts would be solely for community use. Does that mean that the priority for community courts would be with those 2 courts only, or is there another opportunity for the community to use the other 2 courts outside during any hours other than school hours? That's
correct. So that's what we're proposing. You probably saw in the OPIS report, there's a bit of in your agenda, there's a model which sort of, there's some coloured boxes which shows how that would work. So, and obviously we'd have to negotiate around that with the school. Essentially, we'd be looking at school use during school hours, maybe up till 3:30 or 4:30, because they might have some trainings after school. And then after that, the community would come in after 5 o'clock or whatever, and then use it during the midweek nights, and then on the weekends it'd be open to the community. So, whereas the 2 council-funded courts would be 100% of the time, even during school hours, for community use. Notwithstanding the fact that if there's no bookings, then the school might, or other schools might want to use those 2 courts during school hours if there wasn't Pilates or whatever's happening with other groups during the week. So I think it's part of the detail you'd have to work through is actually the booking model for that, but really it's about 100% use for the HCC funded courts, and then the MOE ones, school use during school hours, and then community use after school hours.
I might just, Margaret, on that, I might just get Megan just to comment from the school's perspective, so that aligns with the thinking the school is thinking about.
That's everything that we contributed to OPIS through when that report together. And the only thing I'd add is basically endorsing exactly what Lance is saying, and obviously there'll be times when if there's availability, we try to book all 4, but we would be exactly the same priority as other users, if that makes sense.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Right, so I'm just thinking about, let's say there's an opportunity for a national tournament or a regional tournament from whatever indoor sport, and it requires more than 2 courts, so over a week or 2 weeks. How would that possibly work?
Yeah.
You might want to take a seat up here, actually, Megan. It might be,
Do you want to jump out
easier.
Just let Megan jump in. Thanks.
So I think some of those details will be part of the operating agreement. One of the things that we've sort of talked about is there may be priority users as such, and priority users, I mean, part of this is not just a community facility, it's a regional national facility. And so we need to recognise, I think, that if we have the opportunity for national tournaments or regional tournaments, then they get some sort of priority through the booking process and things like that. So, but that would be part of the operating agreement detail, I think.
And I think going a step further on that, most councils be aware that it's not always high performance things that attract economic benefit to the city. You know, you think of Colgate Games, kids athletics at Porritt Stadium. We get 4,000 kids here with their parents, staying in motels, eating out, etc., etc. Hockey tournaments, football tournaments at Gower Park, all that sort of thing. So quite significant for the city if you add it all up.
No, absolutely true. I've been out at the Porritt Stadium when it's been en masse. It's huge, yeah. Any other questions, Councillor Forsyth?
And just, I suppose, and you mentioned it before, Megan, about the standard of the facility that not necessarily international standard facility, but certainly national.
Yeah, so the preliminary discussions we've had going through the design process, even for, I'll just put it down, but for even for just our 2 courts,
Yes.
has been with both Sport New Zealand and Sport Waikato. And we've pushed really hard so that we're looking at not just one sport standard, but across multiple sport standards. So volleyball, netball, football, a whole bunch of different ones, including flooring and various other things, runoffs, all those sorts of things. So yeah, we've...
Okay, so the runoffs would be big enough.
Runoffs, absolutely.
Yeah.
That has been a huge one, and that's, I suppose that's the piece that the ministry is going to come to the party on for bridging the gap for the schools funding to making those, raising those school courts to the appropriate standard.
I can probably add a little bit to that if you like. The standard with the MOE, from what I can understand, is a 3/4 size court.
Yep.
So some of the other high schools around town will be a 3/4 size. So we've been working closely with Sport New Zealand to ensure that it's a full-size community standard court. So that will include your runoffs. Yeah.
So that's what's contemplated with this proposal?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So it meets all the national standards required?
Yes. Not international event standard, but certainly
No,
national
national.
hosting ability.
So that would be.
Yeah, and to be clear, Your Worship, and sorry, I didn't allude to the diagram that's been circulated.
Everyone's got this? Yeah.
There'll actually be 2 sets of changing rooms. That's the proposal at the moment. So there'll be some on the right-hand side of where it says MOE funded courts, and then there'll be some on the left-hand side. So if there's community use while there's school use, you can actually separate the 2, and there'll be nets. But we'll have to work through that just to see how that works. Obviously, there needs to be some discussion. So there's some thinking around that, and obviously that comes down to the detailed design when you move into that. But actually separating them, and you can actually divide courts with netting arrangements and things like that, which happen at other indoor facilities.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question, so that you can have a wheelchair basketball game going on next to, some Pilates classes, next to a couple of school classes as well.
Yeah. So if anyone's been to Tech Stadium at ASB over in Tauranga, there's, I think that's a 6-court arena. They actually have netting. You can have futsal on 2 courts, and then you can have the wheelchair basketball, and then you could have 12 courts. Is it? Yeah, I have been there. I should know this. But you can actually split up with the netting. It actually works quite well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And look, I know it's sort of detailed stuff, but it does help me have an understanding of what's proposed. So, in some of the other centres I've been to as well, there is an ability to, if you wanted a centre court or a main court for a particular final or some sort of showcase reason, there is that ability, and instead of having the 4 side by side, you would turn the court or have a court or a couple of courts lengthways. So that becomes then a feature court. Is that in your thinking as well?
So we'd have to work through that. So that's
Okay.
part of the design we'd need to do if council looks on favourably on this. It really depends on that, and then we'll work through with the codes and with Michelle and Sport New Zealand's guidance around that with the designers.
Right. Okay.
Okay, Councillor Mallett?
Thanks.
Thank you. Along with the design, the operating form of this thing is going to be critical to its success in terms of the right people being able to use it and et cetera. I just wonder, with Margaret's consent, if we could just change the recommendations on page 33 to the second bullet, changing from, it currently says that council authorises. Could we change that to subject to the chief executive entering into? It just puts more emphasis on the importance of getting that operating agreement and governance operation into place. So, okay, bullet point 2, delete the words "that council authorise" and replace it with, so it currently says that council authorises the chief executive da-da-da. Change that to subject to the chief executive entering into a mutually acceptable governance and operations da-da-da.
Yeah, so it links with I.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, okay, I don't...
Margaret's put the motion up, so if you're happy with that, I'd be happy to
So
second.
when we get to that, let's pick up that, okay, because we just have questions at the moment, then we'll fiddle around with wording. Do you have any questions, Councillor Mallett?
No.
Okay. Councillor Pascoe?
Yes, I've got, first question is on ownership.
And I notice when I read K on page 10, that we are funding $4 million and then up to a further $500,000 as a grant. Now, I assume that council is effectively giving that money to, is it the Board of Trustees or is it the Ministry of Education?
To the MOE.
To the MOE. So the MOE assumes responsibility for depreciation and perhaps all maintenance on the building except for the $120,000 grant that we are initially, operations grant that we are initially providing.
Yeah, so the ministry or the board takes responsibility for the maintenance of the whole site as such.
Yep.
So that's how that would come through. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So does the up to $4.5 million, does that cover, will that cover fully the cost of the building? The part of the building that will be the HCC funded?
Yes, and we've set up to $4.5 million because working through the design process, then if it's less than that, then
We get the benefit of that.
Yeah.
And does the $4.5 million include what might be described as the fit out? That is the things that go inside the courts, such as, I presume there's a floor in there, but what about the bars and the futsal courts and
everything.
So
Nets and
we're
things.
providing basically a turnkey operation
Yes.
for that. Okay. Okay. So just around second area is around governance, and I see that the chief executive will enter in, and it may be when we get to the motion stage, we might want to change that around. I'm just a little bit concerned this morning around Megan's comment that the governance group might comprise 2 Sport Waikato, 2 school and 1 council representative. And I just wonder, is that come from the models that currently operate around the Tamaki model, the models that are being developed in Christchurch and so forth?
So that's a suggestion, obviously.
Does it mirror those models?
It's very close to Tamaki's model. So Tamaki's model is 5 trustees and school council, the trust
or
in
board
their
of trustees,
case,
yep.
and then effectively one who can be a casting vote if there's a difference of opinion.
Okay.
For want of a better way of describing it.
Yeah. Okay. I guess at this stage I'm just not sure whether
I've got you, councillor Gallagher.
whether for our $4.5 million initially anyway, to make sure that it gets up and the operating model is what we think it's going to be and what everyone thinks it's going to be, I think I would feel a little bit shortchanged if council only has 1 representative on the trust. And it may be a short-term option, but I'm just thinking and talking aloud here without having sat down and looked at how, all of the things that the trust board would get themselves involved in.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately that's the suggested through this process with Opus approach, but look, we're pretty relaxed about what it looks like. We just want to make sure that it's fair, balanced, and covers all the bases. So that's why we are quite supportive of Sport Waikato being the representation on there, because that way they're across all sports. We don't end up with individual interests controlling it.
Can I just say some of the models I've looked at, there is a staged approach so that the funders, e.g. a council, if it's going into a relationship with a school and MOE, start off for 2 or 3 years and have a reasonably significant say in that model, and then later on one of their trustees disappears and there's a community or a user group rep. There's more of that representation going forward, because all the for want of a better term, all the infancy issues or opportunities are actually explored and actually worked through, and then it's business as usual after that.
Okay.
So we'll look at that and give councillors assurance that that we will have significant say in that. The other thing I'm just cognizant of is triggering CCO requirements under having controlling interests and things. So,
Which is probably practical in many respects, isn't it? Because
For a
this is for the
trust,
community, so, yeah. Okay, thank you, councillor Pass. Councillor Mallett, no, McPherson, sorry, I do have you though.
Yeah, no, I
I'll
think
stick you up.
Martin got one.
Yes, I've got Martin on the list, yep.
Look, I think there's two issues which have been explored to a certain extent by the other people who've spoken already, Margaret especially. The design and the governance. The design is vital, that's right from the start. And to be honest, I've yet to see a sports facility, even teched, yet built in New Zealand that's actually taken on board fully the design needs of different sports, all of them, and for the want of a bit more consultation, a bit more listening, they could have done all of that. And to be honest, consultants are great to get the big picture done, but not to get the details done. I think the sports need to have an involvement in that, and not as a governance level, but as a potential future user group type level. I think that's vital, and to be honest, not being unfair to Sport Waikato either, you've got an umbrella approach, and that's fine, but there needs to be a detailed approach. We need to have netball people who are going to be running the competitions sitting around the table making sure the design is going to work, and they can work. You get a big square or oblong and you can fit all the sports possible in there, but if you don't have them at the table, then you'll miss some things, and I've seen that at every other venue that I've run things at in New Zealand, which is about 30 or 40 of them. So that's one thing I'd really say we should insist on, that detail being right. You get the detail right, everything else can happen. Even if it doesn't happen at the right time, it can happen. The other thing is, perhaps as well as the broad picture of before and after school usage and who gets the rights, that there should be a sort of a protocol written up as to how that's varied, because Margaret's absolutely right. I mean, I, for instance, could get an offer to run a low level but very large sports tournament that happens to be during sports week when school's on. So can you get access for that? So, and how should we do that? Those sorts of things. But equally, the school may have some really big performance they absolutely could do with the whole entire place for. And so just a protocol for how you get, this is the standard procedure for operation, and we'll have these ways of seeking variances and this much notice and who are priority users, all that sort of stuff needs to be built into it to start with. Otherwise, when you get busy, things will be forgotten and people will get their noses out of joint because they don't think they've got access when they possibly do if they if it's all covered off in advance. As far as the governance goes, I don't see a problem with council having involvement in the setup phase, but I don't think it's necessary for the operational phase. I don't think we're set up to run sports facilities. I've seen that with my own eyes. It's better off being done by the sports themselves or by the other users. So that's a comment that I'd say definitely should be a phased situation, and we should phase our involvement out once the setup's done and the details are right, and okay, it's over to you, community and school, to run it from here. Probably another thing, I'd almost want an assurance from any school, having seen Hamilton Boys High use their multi-million-dollar gymnasium as the world's biggest exam centre several times a year and push all sports out, is that it should not be, you don't need a high 15-metre stud roof ceiling to run exams in. So I want an assurance that exams go elsewhere in the school.
Can I answer you on that one now? So the nice thing is we've got 2 large black box theatres, and we also, all our learning areas are open plan anyway. So we don't see any requirement to use that space for any exams in the future at all.
Fantastic. Great shading on your diagram there, Councillor McPherson.
So one theatre's for $550 and the other's for $350, for example, and those learning commons are huge as well. And also exams are moving to online anyway, so that it all looks very different.
Right, yeah, great. Or actually usage the other way, inappropriate usage by the community. We used to get our volleyball competitions at Masterton Stadium pushed out every year by the Golden Shears. Stank of sheep for 3 weeks afterwards. Anyway, sorry, that's beside the way. Future-proofing in terms of physical sense, is this the footprint of where it's going on the land, enable it to be expanded should someone come along with some money or the need after that to extend sideways or lengthways?
So no, ultimately. There's not a lot of land to the left side of it. In fact, well, I mean, there is a possibility. What we're actually going to put on the end of that piece, whether those courts are there or not, are multi-purpose outdoor courts that are turfed. So that they're for outdoor use and things like, and so you can move between outdoor and indoor and things like that. But potentially in the future you could rip those up and move them on. I don't think that's likely.
Well, you say that now, but you have a look at every single school in Hamilton. I can't think of any that aren't.
Mm-hmm.
They've had extra gymnasiums added since they started. Every single school, high school here, and most of the ones around the country. And you go anywhere and they've got an old gym and a new gym.
Yeah.
And sometimes a new +1 gym like Boys High.
Yeah, it's a tight site for everything. So we've tried to look as much as design and planning you can put into it at this point. I think that's how it'll fit for the time being at least.
What's the projected role? Again?
For the whole site,
Yeah.
2,500.
Yeah.
So Councillor McPherson, in the Opus report,
Yeah.
there's the other options that we looked at, and I failed to mention it in my preamble. Both of those are good options as well. This one, ranked higher because of the immediacy and the opportunity. University of Waikato's got some definite plans around building a 2-court indoor recreation centre and some hockey turfs and what have you. They are very amenable to extending that in the future. They're probably a good year, 18 months behind the planning for this, and they've got it in their capital program, but they haven't actually got it absolutely committed to a particular year. Wintec obviously got a lot of land and but they at this stage don't have any capital funding for a contribution. So there's a couple of other cabs that are sitting there to go off the rank in the future as well, and in line with the regional sports facilities plan, but take your point.
Yeah, I would say that if you're going to have a large site, you still need room to grow. So even if it's, other things happening on the land, certainly don't build it out.
No, so it's not built out.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gallagher?
I think, and when we come to discussion, I'll be making uncomplimentary references to an aspect of the Universities of Waikato's partnership with us on the Performing Arts Centre, because obviously I don't want to see a repeat of that, and I'm just wanting to run past Megan as chair and Lance. The assumption is the motion is now, I think, is going to be moved is that there's a vote to agree to agree, subject to a detail. So obviously, it seems to me the key points of detail will be governance, structure, and the other point of detail, in my view, will be around the branding of the facility. And for example, University of Waikato Performing Arts, wonderful community facility. I don't know if anyone would realise that $2 million were put in by ratepayers, and there's a $165,000 up to operating expenses each year. And I don't know why on earth we allow that, frankly. So I guess to Megan, what we're keen, and it's actually about the ratepayers seeing what they're getting for their money, and you're obviously open to proper branding, so it reflects.
Yep. Look, we're completely open to that, and I suppose, like I said this morning, we are open to this being a proper partnership, which also means recognising the partners in various ways. So for us, that will mean would mean signage and the like, but it will also mean how we refer to the location and newsletters and just all those sort of simple communications as well. So we're not taking partnership lightly.
And I know it's a detail, but really be interested when the details come back to us, how the tamaki works, tauranga, etc., so that the community fully sees it is a genuine joint facility, funded. Thank you.
Councillor Mallett, I had you again.
Thank you. I think a lot of the discussion so far sort of supports my suggestion that we're a bit stronger on point 2 in the resolution, that it
So
be
we're
subject
going
to.
to get to the
Yep,
resolution.
that's why I'm
Yep.
saying it, thank you. The other one, the fourth bullet point down there, Rob may have slipped when he said it. He said an original grant of $120,000. Just to be quite clear, that's an ongoing annual operating support, is it? Sorry, okay, I may have misheard what you said. Okay, so that is $120,000 per annum, which we will. Okay, now I assume that will be built into the agreement that is reached between the two sides, so we understand that. Okay, so councillors need to understand that there's 120k going in a year. All right, that's clear. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. Look, I'll signal I'll be very happy to move the recommendations when you take those. So I'm supporting it.
Yes, Councillor Forsyth has indicated that, so you're going to second, that's fine.
So look, the question I just have is around, following on from Councillor Mallett, the operating grant, which is over $1 million for the 10-year period. And I see in the documents that there's a deficit planned in the first year of $261,000. Will the cost of sports participating in the stadium, call it what you want, will they be paying an appropriate level to reflect the user pays? Because I'm just wondering, what is the possibility of the trust coming back to council after year 1 or year 2 and saying, look, the $120,000 operating grant is not enough?
I'd like to think that that's not going to happen. We've done some operational modelling costs, and there's a couple of scenarios around how commercial is the facility, and I think you've hit on a point around the fee structure, and that's what's got to be worked through. So we've worked within ranges, and when we talked about the 120,000, it's actually worked on the mid-range of the different options. So there's been quite a bit of work based on other facilities that are around, but I'd be very much around capping council's operational grant going forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Young?
Just further to the question about the operational grant, 120,000 is the council share for the operation.
That's correct.
Not the school.
Yep.
Did that be a contribution from the ministry? Or?
Yeah, well, there's the ongoing 5YA funding via the ministry that takes care of the maintenance of those other two.
Oh,
so
okay.
that it all wraps together.
Yeah, and also it's mentioned prefer to have a new trust. I saw it on there is a Hamilton Community Indoor Recreation Centre Trust. Could you tell me a little more about that trust?
So that was a trust that was set up, Councillor McPherson would probably know better than me, about 8 or 9 years ago, with a number of entities represented, including Sport Waikato, Hamilton, Netball, and Monica's actually on it, Monica Leggett, who was here earlier this morning. And it was a trust really set up to, with the aims of actually developing an indoor recreation centre, and they have actually presented to this council on numerous occasions, especially when they were looking at working with Windtech around the potential option there about 3 LTPs ago and subsequent LTPs since then. So that trust's supportive of this proposal. They have been pretty much in recess for a while. They haven't been that active, but they wouldn't be the trust. We wouldn't see them being the trust that actually runs this facility.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I have a couple of questions and they relate all to timelines, just so that we can maybe get a bit more information to inform the recommendation. So commitment, I'm looking page 34, paragraph 14. This is about time frame. So by the 31st of March, we just need to confirm we're in.
Yep.
Right? So just design finalisation and governance structure finalisation. What sort of time frame are you anticipating for that?
That's probably a better question for the ministry, who obviously aren't here. But I can tell you from a design point of view, we've put that back quite a bit just to get to this point. So it would be fairly fast. I mean, it would be a matter of probably 3 months to move through design and operational agreement.
So that's not required within that 31 March
No.
timeframe. So when's the anticipated beginning to build date?
Well, it's already, I mean, as far as the courts,
Yeah.
I think the beginning to build phase is around about August, I think.
Okay, all right. And the governance structure then, of course, doesn't have to be bedded down or finalised until it's
Until
good
it's
to go, but
operational.
obviously,
Yeah.
wanting to make sure that that's. The reason I'm asking these questions because it might be that we need to have a report back, Lance, about design and governance structure prior to 30 June when we sign off the
Yeah,
annual
we were
plan.
intending to do that, Your Worship.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
'Cause that might just pick up a few of the queries.
yeah, I
that
think
people are
Councillor
raising.
McPherson's pretty much encapsulated all the matters that
Yeah.
Megan and I are going to have an arm wrestle over, so, and work through with the users. And I think you brought up really good points, Councillor McPherson, so thanks for highlighting those. So,
Okay, all right.
So we'll be bringing that back in construction. My understanding, talking to Rob Peter and the team that are working on it, they are looking at basically getting this built by April next year, and then basically then they hand it over to the entity that's going to run it.
Right.
Yeah, but just to add on that, the piece of land requires loading, so that's why there's the earlier
Yes,
timeframe.
I think we understand that in order to prepare the groundwork, we need to know if there's going to be 4 courts or 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Exactly.
So the commitment has got to have some certainty about it because there's stuff happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the additional thing is, so if council isn't amenable to the 2 courts alongside our 2 courts, so our 2 courts will not be built to regional or national level. They will go back to being standard school size. So that's the additional. So there is not an option to defer in that regard.
Yes, no, I think that's quite clear in the report. All right, so are there any other questions? Councillor Pascoe?
Yeah, I do have another question. I'm just not sure whether Deputy Mayor Chesterman's question about the deficit in the first year was clearly answered, because as I read on page 46, it suggests there under key findings that the facility is projected to make a 261k deficit in its first year. This could be erased or mitigated with increased program delivery and partner subsidy levels. Now that to me is suggesting if the increased program delivery doesn't mitigate the deficit, then the hat might go around to the partners of which the council is one and say, we need some more money. Just concerns me a little bit that, and this could be ongoing beyond the first year. So I guess it's putting a bit more pressure back onto the chief executive in terms of the negotiation, but I would not like to see us vulnerable to some substantial additional payments. So I think this initial period of setup is going to be fairly important, that council has got well and truly got a foot in the door
Yeah.
to help mitigate.
So Rob, that's reflected on the establishment board and the subsequent board side of things as well for the school, because we have no interest in operating something that will potentially be a loss at some point.
Right.
Because we do not want to be diving into funds that should be for teaching and learning.
Because you don't have other money that you can find.
Can I just say, Opus based that statement on the worst case scenario in that range of operating costs that I talked about, and 100,000 of that is depreciation. In my view, the staff costs in that scenario are very, very high. I think they're too high, and we'll be working through that. So I think you're right, Councillor Pascoe, that there's some refinement that needs to be done.
And you mentioned before that depreciation won't be one of our costs anyway, will it?
No.
As a partner.
No, that'll sit.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so there's no other questions. I've asked you just to put the resolution as it is set out on page 10, paragraph 42 up on the screen, but I think there will need to be a little bit of wording change to it. I just want to check.
Your Worship, I think
I just want to.
it needs the Ministry of Education
Yes,
as
I've
well
got
as the
that.
Rototuna High School Establishment Board.
Yeah,
I've checked that with the Ministry yesterday, so.
So we'll add that in. So councillors, just adding in 1 and I and J, we just need to add in It's a partnership agreement between the high school and the MOE.
That.
It's a three-way
No, it's
partnership.
got Romans 1, IJ.
That's number one. Number two, I just need to get,
No, you need to have the road between the high school and then,
establishment board and
Another part of
MOE.
yeah.
Yeah, and it should be board of trustees on both I and J, Jude. Yeah. So the next question, Lance, I'm just wanting to get, because I sense that councillors are, subject to stuff, but I was just conscious about you needing a definitive commitment, which is set out in I, but trying to pick up concerns about some visibility about design and the issues that Councillor McPherson and others have raised, and also the governance structure. So councillors, I'm not sure whether the subject to is the right approach, given the, you need a commitment that we're in, as I understand it, because things are happening. But it may be that there needs to be an additional JKLM at the bottom, which says something like staff are to report back to the council with the final design and governance and operating model prior to 30 June. I'm just trying to get a sense of
Your Worship,
time
K
frames
is
and
the
flow.
key one to lock this in by the 31st of March.
Yes, so
The
I was
financial
just
contribution.
picking up Councillor Mallett's subject to. I'm just concerned that
Hep-
subject to may not be actually what's actually needed here. But we do need to cover off some visibility on design and
We're happy to
governance.
report back as the wording in M.
So I guess I'm just going out to councillors here and just saying, does this pick up? Well, is that sufficient for some of the concerns raised? Because what I'm hearing from the General Manager is there does need to be, if the council wants to support this, we need to give we can't be a subject to. We've got to say we're in and we're committed. I think, but Councillor Mallett, you may have a different view there, in which case you need to test that with the General Manager, and you've got the Chair of the Board here, so.
Yep. Well, I wouldn't be comfortable moving it as it is, supporting it as it is. I support the concept, but utterly fundamental to this thing is the operational model. And if we don't have certainty on that, and that comes from having an acceptable governance body and board, and a constitutional set of rules on the way the thing works, we may find there is no community usage. We may find that's all community usage. We may
So
find.
sorry, can you need to be listening to this, Lance and Megan, because Gary's expressing his views here.
So I mean, if we can't, I mean, this is community. This is ratepayer money, and we are. You've been drinking. This is ratepayer money, and we are representing ratepayers when we're in this venue here. So we need to protect the usage of the availability of the facility for ratepayers.
Rather than debating your point, what I was giving you the opportunity was to just flush out and test with these two here about whether there can be a subject to, I guess, because the way I'm hearing it, there can't be.
Yeah, so I don't think there can be, look, that 31 March we have put off. We've tried to bring this to council earlier and things like that, all sorts of things. It is now or never. So
what assurances can you give to respond to Councillor Mallett about his concerns that, it might not end up being community use?
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, the sort of assurances I can give you are that already the type of conversations we've had with council, with staff, with Sport Waikato, and we've also included some other sports within that already.
The problem I have, Megan, is I can remember when the rugby stadium was going to have club rugby on it, and it never has.
Right.
And it happens over and over again, and it won't be your fault. There's no one doing this deliberately. It'll just turn out that
and I get that.
Yep,
I do get that.
And I'm very supportive of the project, particularly because of the community usage factor. But if we can't protect that or have some degree of certainty, I don't know to what extent we do. What's 31st of March mean?
Can I, part of the things that myself and Lance have been discussing is there's probably going to be some interim agreement or an interim agreement before we hit the road in terms of the final trust setup. So what I've been talking about with Lance is some form of heads of agreement with the school, with the delivery of the contribution towards it, that there is a commitment in writing. It may not necessarily have the nuts and bolts behind a trust that's going to work this way, but it reflects the fact contribution to $4 million, which council's intent is for community use, and that the school actually signs up for that to basically recognise the relationship that we're forming, and it gives sort of a principle-based approach to actually developing a more detailed trust deed going down the track as well.
So
Putting it practically, I can see a situation where councillors are being rung up by the local volleyball team saying, we can't get in, we just can't get in, we're trying really hard and we can't get in. And I think that would be an absolute default on our behaviour.
What date are you expecting that to be?
Can I just say...
No, hold on a minute. What date are you expecting that to be finalised, that memorandum of
I expect that we'll do that before the 31st of March.
Right? Is that your understanding?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, it would need to be. I mean, that's part of the commitment.
Yes.
Yeah, and
MOE
the priorities and things like that will all be part of that.
Yeah, so there's a funding sharing agreement with the MOU around that, which will talk about paying the money, and then it'll talk about the principles around then what will be the trust operating it. So it'll have the principles around community uses, X% and that sort of thing, the things that Councillor McPherson talked about, and then the detail will be worked around in the trust deed. So you'll have the highline principles, the not negotiables from council and the school, and that'll be in the funding agreement, and then there's another agreement around the operating and the trust and how that operates going forward, and with a staged approach if that's what's necessary.
Okay. I'm just very aware that once the money's been paid out, we lose all leverage, and I don't want to be crude about the whole thing, but we don't have a voice after that unless we have some ability to, some ability to, within the governance structure, which at the moment is not guaranteed. I mean, it's I guess you'd expect it to be, but that's not guaranteed in way of resolution.
Gary, I've indicated that we would expect something. I mean, I understand some councillors don't think that's necessarily needed, but our expectation is that council would be at the table in some form around that governance structure as well.
I know, but I've just been through this before, and major promises were never, and not you guys. Major promises were not kept.
Yeah, because it might be that you have to put an amendment up. I just need to go back to the mover. I'll come to you, Councillor Gallagher. I see you. Councillor Forsyth and Deputy Mayor, you moved and seconded this, right?
Yeah.
Where are you sitting just on the motion? Because it might be that it's not resolvable and we take an amendment. So
I'm not so comfortable with the staff reporting back to council. My understanding of that clause suggests that councillors then have an opportunity to really delve into the detail and to say, well, no, we're not happy with this model, so then we can put the brakes on.
Okay.
I think we need, the 30th of June is the wrong kind of date, and I think we need to decide today, as has been indicated. Mm-hmm. So I'm not happy with the last clause M, and point B, the second one, if council authorises the chief executive to enter into a mutually blah, 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 I think there needs to be a date there. It doesn't have to be by the 31st of March. I mean, there's no date up there at all. Or is that what we need to put up there for point 1? I'm just not quite sure where the date needs to go. Some direction or some assistance.
Can you help?
Well, we can do that by the 31st of March because that's the MOU.
Put it in.
And then there'll be other documents that'll flow out of that.
So in J or an I? J?
J, is it?
J, yes.
J. All right, so M's out from the mover and the seconder, is that right, Deputy
But a
Mayor?
report back comes in J before 31st of March?
Yes. Yeah, or by the 31st.
Okay, so you can just get that wording up there on J?
And just while that's been put up there, in terms of I, the way that I is currently constructed, and also J with I, is that it's very clear that under, through myself as the Chief Executive, that the agreement will be for community use. So the last few words on M is for community use. So we're not going to enter anything with the school that doesn't reflect community use.
But I is conditional on J.
No, I think that...
Well, then it
that's not
has no strength at all. It means nothing.
No, just a minute, that's not the intention of the mover, but as I said, we might not be able to resolve your issue in this wording, Councillor Matt, so you might have to move an amendment. Can I just... You wanted M out?
Yes.
Yes, so M's out.
So I don't understand what you're saying, Gary, about...
Oh, well, unless you have subject to, just by the laws of logic and grammar, I and J don't relate. What I'm trying to get at is that you can get I once you've got J. And the J is an acceptable operating governance structure, whatever that may be. If you don't have that, I is independent itself and happens either way. So we may not have a operating agreement, but the funding will still go through and all that sort of stuff.
Okay,
And I think that we have to have a...
No,
Yes, so as I've said, Councillor Mallett, I mean, you're welcome to raise an amendment if the mover and the seconder don't want to accommodate that. I won't take that. I'll come to you. Yes, I'll come to you. Okay, so Councillor Gallagher, did you have...
No, I think that's covered because all what I want to the Chief Executive, it's getting you have a high level agreement, right? So if there was any legal dispute, Megan went off to the Bahamas and they changed their mind, we're covered. So, you know, all I'm wanting is this resolution to establish by resolution our intent.
That's correct.
And I think the intent is there, that we've got the high level memorandum of understanding, signed the contract, and then obviously the memorandum of understanding leads us into the detail of the governance structure because it commits all parties to come to an agreement down the track around, you know, a governance structure that's got to be acceptable basically and signed off by all the parties.
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor McPherson, you had some questions?
Yeah, I'm not quite so sanguine as Councillor Gallagher on that because I do think that I's not worth anything to the community unless there's also a J. I'm quite confident that it'll happen, but I just think you need to get a fair way down the details before you would be confident enough to sign a heads of agreement and I. That's how, you know, it's almost, you know, I can understand Gary's point. Why would you give the money unless you were sure that J was going to happen in the right way? That's all it's saying. And I don't actually think there's much difference between the parties. So I think that's what we all want. So I'd hate to see people vote against the motion because with some minor order problems or something like that.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to take 5 minutes break. People who are interested in these things, go and talk and come up with what wording you want. And if there isn't an agreement on a single set of wording, we'll take an amendment. But as long as you get the wording to...
Can the agreement be done with
right.
just...
Take 5.